Welcome, Federico, to Legends of Lightning, our second hackathon dedicated
Yeah.
exclusively to Lightning. Thank you so much for being here.
No, and thank you so much for the invitation.
We're thrilled to learn more about RGB and have you explain it to us. As you know, this competition and this tournament has been going on for about 2 months. It'll last until December 10. And there are incredible and interesting projects that are being built right now as we speak. And over 200 makers, builders are in the project, building projects right now. And I wanted to ask you, I know you have a bit of hackathon experience yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you came into Bitcoin. You said 2013. And then also some of your experiences of what is interesting about a hackathon.
Yeah, sure. My first approach with Bitcoin was mostly for the economical side of it. I was interested in the idea of this money that is not censorable, not controllable by the government, truly private, truly neutral, and it was something very, very interesting to read about. And then, of course, going deeper into the rabbit hole, I started being very interested also in all the technical aspects of Bitcoin. And the technology behind it is as fascinating as the economical side and as what it achieves. Over the years, I went deeper and deeper, started working on different projects in Bitcoin and getting gradually more and more involved until then it quite quickly became my full-time job after a few years of involvement in the space. Over the years, I currently work in Phoenix. I manage the RGB team inside Phoenix that was full time on trying to make RGB ecosystem grow. In the past, I worked also with many startups. I spent many years in a startup that was building infrastructure for merchants that wants to accept Bitcoin payments. And as you mentioned, I also had an hackathon experience several years ago that was actually also in a way related to what I work on right now. Because with the team, we won the hackathon on a tokenization project. So we were tokenizing art on top of Bitcoin. And at the time RGB didn't exist yet, so we used the counterparty, which was a node protocol for tokens on top of Bitcoin, which actually is quite old. I think it's since 2013, 2014. It's been around, and I experimented with tokenization on top of Bitcoin for RGB, and also I experienced the problems with other protocols for tokens on top of Bitcoin.
And it was run by a museum, interestingly, right? A museum.
Yeah, it was a museum in Rome that organized. It's a modern art museum in Rome called Maxi that organized this hackathon, and blockchain was the trend of the year. So it was a blockchain themed hackathon.
So your team won, which was exciting.
Yeah, it was quite fun. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what are we going to be talking about? What is RGB? I understand it is you can do anything except send Bitcoin, basically, right? And if Bitcoin is money and Lightning is scalability, then RGB is programmability, from what I understand.
Yes, more like also that, but mostly is an asset issuance platform. But it's a more very much generalized, so you can do you can in theory do more than simple asset issuance. You can create more generic kind of rights, but to keep it simple, I think the main focus of what you can do right now is mostly asset issuance on top of Bitcoin and on top of Lightning.
And how long has it been around? I know Giacomo, Peter, Maxime, you guys wrote the black paper. Tell us why it's called a black paper. And then how long has it been around? Why is it the time to focus on RGB now? Why is it so important today? for example?
Yeah, no, yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. RGB's been around for a very long time. I mean, Giacomo started the RGB project, I think, back in 2017. And then he went through different iteration. He went through different teams, worked on it. So he had like many. It took a while because it's been redone a few times. Basically, yeah, from the first prototype, basically only the name remained the same because everything changed. The name and the overall scope, everything changed quite significantly. And yeah, and now, but yeah, the difference is that now compared to the past, we have some working products and developers tool that people can use. So we have a few wallets that integrated RGB and that support RGB assets. We have several developers tools, including the one that we build with in Phoenix. It's called RGB Lib. It's very popular and is.
Can you type it for the
Yeah, sure.
audience so that we have it in the comments?
Yeah, I will write it in private chat because I cannot do it in the public one.
Okay, I'll do it in the public for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, under in the GitHub organization, it's called RGB Tools. Or actually,
RGB tools.
I will quickly get the link.
Got it.
And yeah, it's like a very it's a Rust library that makes it very easy to build an RGB aware wallet without having to fully understand all the internals of RGB or the technical details. It's meant that,
is it the GitHub? Okay, I got it.
Yeah,
GitHub.
It's meant for developers that wants to quickly, like they want to build to integrate RGB into their wallet, but they don't want to go into the details of client-side validation and all that kind of stuff. They can just use this library and it abstracts most of the complexity for them.
So it's been working for more than 2 years, like, or it's usable, or
yeah.
or
So like no, so yeah. So so RGB itself it's been currently is still in a testnet phase. Still there is I mean a few people made some issuance on the mainnet, but it's mostly like NFT without real monetary value. So there is we still don't have real valuable assets on mainnet. And this is because we are still in a phase where we are working on security auditing and testing of the protocol. So yeah, this is basically what many issuers are waiting for this phase to be completed. But I mean, the protocol is there. It's final. There are tools available. There are already at least 4 or 5 teams that are using the library that we just linked for to integrate into their wallet. And many other teams that are building like their own stuff without using this library. So there is definitely momentum, and yeah, like more relevant for Legends of Lightning is that we also have a Lightning node that is actually aware. That is also been developed by our team in Phoenix. I will also share the link.
Please, that'd be great.
And so this node, maybe like skipping bits and parts, but is built using LDK, and you can use it and try it out. And if you know how to use a Lightning node, you should be able to use this node as well. It's quite similar interface to any other Lightning node.
Got it. So would you like to start with the presentation? I have a lot of questions, but I will wait until you finish before asking.
Yeah, actually, because I was already anticipating some stuff from the presentation. So, but if I go through the presentation and then we can discuss everything else.
That way I don't get ahead of myself.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Ready?
Yeah. So yeah, first of all, like what is the problem that RGB is trying to solving? There is definitely demand for peer-to-peer payments with stablecoin and other derivatives, meaning other tokenized assets. So I don't know, maybe you may not be interested in stablecoin because Bitcoin is the only real dark money that is truly decentralized and truly sensitive. The reason why we are all real. But the reality is that there are a lot right now. Stablecoin have more traction than Bitcoin. Stablecoin are more used for payments than Bitcoin, and more used for trading also than Bitcoin. So there is clearly market demand for peer-to-peer payment with stablecoins, and currently the only available solution are on altcoins. So people use Ethereum, use Tron, use Polygon, all that kind of stuff. That maybe is good enough for some people, but is of course they cannot offer the same level of security and censorship resistant and decentralization of Bitcoin. And often people say, okay, but stablecoin are centralized anyway. Why do we care about being on top of Bitcoin rather than of some semi-centralized or completely centralized altcoin? I think it is important because one thing is centralization on the issuer, and another thing is centralization on the transport layer. And if the transport layer is centralized, you have all kind of reliability issues. I don't know, if you I think all of you know the problem that many of these altcoins had over the years. For example, like Solana been offline and not working for several hours, or like Ethereum network being heavily congested that for several times you couldn't send a transaction even by paying very high fees. On the problem that with all of this system, it's very hard to run your own node, meaning that it's very hard to verify that you actually received your payment without trusting a third party, where this third party is usually not the issuer but just a service provider that gives you access to an indexer of the blockchain. And so you add the other layer of trust towards people that are not the issuer, or other random service provider that you don't know much about, and that you need to rely heavily on. And when you are playing with a lot of money, you may want to avoid it. Or in general, also you may not want to have to pay fees to have some balance in an altcoin just to pay fees. You may not want to hold the Ethereum, to hold the Tron, and to also to deal with all the extra complexity of yet another altcoin, another wallet to manage. To have those stablecoins that and the other kinds of assets directly on top of Bitcoin would be very useful very good for a lot of people and a lot of users of these stablecoins. And I think it will also be good for Bitcoin, because if people start to use Bitcoin for other stuff, for to move USDT around, then when they understand that the US dollar is still a bad asset compared to Bitcoin, they only have to understand this. They don't need to understand the new technology, because they are already used to use the Bitcoin as a transport layer for their stablecoin payments. So we want Bitcoin to move stablecoins or other non-scam assets around. Why don't we have this already? Actually, we had several other Bitcoin-based solutions in the past, such as Counterparty that we already mentioned, or OmniLayer, that actually until a few months ago it was possible to move USDT on top of OmniLayer, but then it was discarded by Tether because it was not many people were using it. The protocol was not maintained, and yes, so it was not worth for Tether to support it anymore. And why all of this? There were a few others in the past. And why all of this phase? Because they were quite old protocols, both Counterparty, OmniLayers, and other colored coin protocols, and they failed to fully leverage the Bitcoin potential. Why? Because they were created in a period when there was little attention to scalability and privacy, because blocks were empty. Nobody, so it was basically free to do a Bitcoin transaction. So scalability, optimization of the scalability was really not a priority. And also privacy-wise, at the time, people were thinking that Bitcoin is kind of anonymous by itself. You don't need to worry about privacy. But then, yeah, we understood that it's not so easy. So you also need to try to optimize around privacy. And of course, being all the protocols, they were not compatible with all the scalability solution that we had over the years. Like the most important of which, I mean, we had few on-chain optimization, and also we have Lightning Network right now. And that, some people complain that it's not perfect, but it's still the best we have for scaling Bitcoin in a trustless way. And so it's very important that if we want to, I mean, for payments, scalability is quite important. So we need something that is compatible with Lightning Network and has attention to privacy, has attention to efficiency in the use of the blockchain, and yeah, is fully leverage all the good stuff that Bitcoin can offer. So what are the desired features? It needs to be sustainable with consumer grade hardware, which is a problem that all the protocols were facing. So yeah, when I was doing the hackathon that we were mentioning before, we used the counterparty, and to run a counterparty node on top of the normal Bitcoin node, it was yeah, quite a pain in terms of resource needed by the machine. It took a while to synchronize it. The node need to continually scan all the transactions on the blockchain to see if there is any transaction that match the counterparty transaction template, and then to index it. So it was very resource intensive, and it was very hard to run a counterparty or like same for omni-layer wallet or mobile without having to rely on some sort of service provider. So we wanted to be efficient in the usage of the on-chain space. We still need to use the blockchain because it's the only way we can leverage all the decentralization benefits of Bitcoin, but we want to use it as little as possible. So we shouldn't use the blockchain as a layer for data availability, so where we put all the information of the transactions involved, but we should use Bitcoin only for double spending protection, which is for the thing for which we really need Bitcoin for, and so we should use it only for that. Then we want this protocol to be compatible with the Lightning Network and to have some layer of programmability to do more advanced stuff. And yeah, the solution that RGB employs is the client-side validation. So in client-side validation, the transaction information is not published on a global ledger like with Bitcoin or any other blockchain-based solution, but it's only shared between peers. So when I pay you, I send to you the information related to the transaction that I send you, but we don't publish it on any blockchain. So you only see validate the transaction that you are interested in, which is good for both scalability and privacy. Because if I only validate the transactions that are relevant for me, it means that I validate less stuff. So my device consumes less resources. And if I only see what is relevant for me, it means that also other people only see what's relevant for them, and they don't see my transaction. So it's good for privacy. So as we were saying, we use the blockchain only to protect from double spend. We will see how in a couple of slides. And actually, this is achieved by committing each RGB transfer inside a Bitcoin transaction. Yeah, we will see exactly more specifically how it happens soon. So the paradigm shift is that, yeah, instead of pushing all the data on a blockchain, like in a global ledger system, we just share it peer-to-peer between the people that are interested in it and that they have some interest in the transaction, so that less data is shared, less data is validated by everyone, and people see less stuff about less data about other people financial life. So how does let's go a bit deeper on how RGB actually achieves all of this. So first step in the life of an RGB asset is the issuance of it. So we have an issuance contract that defines the asset itself. So it defines all the metadata, such as the name, the ticker, the total supply, and like you can have a media attachment to it. You can have some legal contract attached to it. You can have all kind of metadata. You define the validation rules, so how this token can be moved in the future. And then, most importantly, you define the first owner of the token. Ownership in RGB is defined by controlling of a Bitcoin UTXO. So the owner of an UTXO is also the owner of the asset. And this UTXO can be anything. It can be simple single sig, can be a multi-sig, can be like a Lightning commitment transaction, can be a BTDM output, can be the most complex smart contract that you can think of. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is, do you have the ability to spend it or not? So if you have the ability to spend the UTXO, whatever is the script you use to spend it, then you can prove that you are the legitimate owner of the asset that is being allocated to such UTXO. So ownership is also always defined as an UTXO. So issuance contract will define, okay, we issued like a total supply of 100 or whatever the issuer want to issue, and we allocate all of it to a first UTXO, or actually also potentially to a second UTXO, but let's keep it simple. So the issuer allocates all the supply to UTXO, presumably of himself. So in this example, to UTXO A. And now UTXO A is the legitimate owner of those assets. Only by proving that you're the owner of UTXO A, you can spend those assets and move them to other people. How can I prove that I'm the legitimate owner of the UTXO A? By spending it. That's the only way you can prove that I am the legitimate owner and that I didn't already spend those coins in the past. So since the UTXO can be spent only once, I can only once create a transaction that spend the UTXO A, and when I spend the UTXO A, I prove that I am the legitimate owner of the asset. But yeah, before spending the UTXO A, I need to decide what I want to do with the asset and spend it. So I create what we call an ownership transfer, or like more technically would be called state transition, but it's simple terminology with ownership transfer. And I move the ownership of all the assets that were allocated to UTXO A towards the other UTXOs, to a list of other UTXO. So, for example, we had 100 assets in input, so 20 of them would move them to UTXO B, and 80 of them to UTXO C. So presumably 20 is the amount I want to send to my counterparty, and 8 is the change I want to send back to myself. But back to myself, I need to send it to a new UTXO, because UTXO A now is going to be spent, and it's not going to be exist as a UTXO anymore, because UTXO is for unspent transaction output. Once it's spent, it's no longer unspent. So and the asset can only be to unspent transaction output. So I always need to have another UTXO ready where I can send the change of my payment. So I created this ownership transfer. So this ownership transfer say, okay, all the assets that were allocated to UTXO A, now they will go partially to UTXO B and partially to UTXO C. This ownership transfer, then we want to make sure that I cannot do it twice. I cannot then create another UTXO transfer that sends 100 to UTXO C, like all back to myself, and I perform some sort of a double spending. So to avoid this, the ownership transfer message is to simplify hashed. Actually, I mean, there are a bunch of Merkle tree in the middle, but let's keep it simple. It's like there is like an hash of this UTXO transfer, and we put this hash inside a Bitcoin transaction. We commit the ownership transfer inside a Bitcoin transaction, but not any Bitcoin transaction. It needs to be the Bitcoin transaction that is spending UTXO A. So in this way, we are, one, proving that we are the legitimate owner of UTXO A because we are spending it in a Bitcoin transaction. And two, we are proving that we cannot do this ownership transfer twice because we are committing the ownership transfer inside this Bitcoin transaction. And so we have guarantees that this Bitcoin transaction, once received a sufficient amount of on-chain confirmation, cannot be double spent, because we trust that money is sufficiently decentralized that the double spending of Bitcoin transaction cannot happen. And so if I cannot double spend this Bitcoin transaction, I cannot create another commitment for the same ownership transfer spending the same UTXO. and the commitment is made in a way that there can only be one valid commitment per Bitcoin transaction. So I cannot push two versions of the ownership transfer inside the same Bitcoin transaction. So in this way, we legitimately prove that we could spend the asset, and we define where we are moving the asset. The ownership transfer itself, I would say we only put a commitment inside the Bitcoin transaction. It's just like an hash. But the content itself is only shared between the people involved. So between A and B. The owner of TXO A and the owner of TXO B. It's sent directly through a direct communication channel between the two parties involved. So this doesn't go on the blockchain. It's just committed and then shared in a peer-to-peer manner. And then when the owner of TXO B will want to spend it, it will do the same thing. It will create an ownership transfer. It moves some token from B to TXO D and to TXO E. The amount, we're missing. This should be like 14, but yeah, never mind. And then all of this is committed inside the Bitcoin transaction spending with TXO B, and so on and so forth with the following transfers. So this is how RGB works on chain, but what we're really interested in is the Lightning network compatibility. So basically, we said that asset can be allocated to any TXOs. So this TXO can be like a multisig of a Lightning channel opening. It can be the output of a Lightning commitment transaction. So we can quite easily add the RGB asset on top of inside the Lightning channel. So it is possible to modify an existing Lightning node to support RGB asset. And once we have that, we can create asset-denominated Lightning channel. So a Lightning channel that instead of being denominated in Bitcoin is denominated in whatever asset we issued on top of RGB. So like in the future, it may be like a USDT or whatever other asset will be issued on top of RGB. Then, once we have that, asset can be transferred with the same speed and convenience of Bitcoin and Lightning. And also, the same trade-offs that you need to be online, always on LSP, and manage liquidity, etc. So it's exactly the same trade-off that you have with Bitcoin and Lightning. And due to the nature of Lightning, you of course require to have sufficient liquidity in the asset you are moving between the channels. So if I send you 100 USDT, we need to have at least one channel or like relay to other people's channels that has at least 100 USDT in liquidity. And you have to need sufficient liquidity along all the path, and you have inbound liquidity and outbound liquidity exactly the same as you have with Bitcoin and Lightning. So we have the first node that supports this is the RGB Lightning node that we already linked. So you can also try for yourself. This node has been built using LDK. Actually used a small fork of LDK that is extra modularity, and then using LDK, we created a node that also has all the RGB logic inside. Actually using RGB for all the for much of the RGB logic. So this could also be done with other Lightning nodes potentially. We just started with LDK because it was the easiest one to do, because it's first of all it's written in Rust, such as also the RGB stack is currently written in Rust, and also you already provided the good modularity that made it easier to support RGB assets without having to have a very big fork that would be hard to maintain in the future. But let's look a bit more into details how it works, the compatibility with Lightning. So let's look at normal commitment transaction work on Lightning. Normally how Lightning works, we have first a funding transaction where one party sends some Satoshi to a multisig with the desired counterparty. And in RGB, what we do is that we create a specular RGB state transition or ownership transfer, where we say, okay, say we have 500 USDT in the any TXOs, and now this 556 USDT they will be allocated to the multi-sig UTXO of the channel opening. So the channel is open. We still need satoshis to open the channel because we need to have outputs that are above the dust limit that can be eventually be broadcast on the blockchain if needed. But it can be an economically insignificant amount. They just need to be above dust limit. And this ownership transfer, this the transaction is committed inside the same Bitcoin transaction that is spending the UTXO that move the asset, so the UTXO of Alice, and here we use an operator output for commitment. Actually, RGB also support commitments using Taproot, but that has extra implementation complexity. So for the RGB Lightning node, we just use operator that has is less complexity and easier to implement. Then, once we have the channel open, we will have the first commitment transactions to guarantee that neither party can order the channel and blackmail the counterparty for to release the funds. So before this is broadcasted and confirmed, that we will want to have a pair of commitment transactions. And each commitment transaction this is the commitment transaction signed by Alice and that Bob controls and can broadcast at any time. In that each commitment transaction, basically, it moves the money from the multi-sig towards two output, one controlled by one party, in this case by Alice, and the other one controlled by a script that either Alice can spend using the secret of Bob or Bob can spend it using the timer. So this is normal Lightning stuff, nothing new, so I won't spend too much time on this. But what is interesting is that for each commitment transaction, we create a specular RGB state transition that moves the asset from the multi-sig towards the two output. So let's say that we want Alice wanted to move 70 USDT to Bob. So the two commitment transaction will the transition will allocate 430 USDT to the first output of the commitment transaction controlled by Alice, and 70 to the commitment transaction controlled by either Alice or Bob, depending on the situation. So if it's an old commitment transaction, then Alice can spend it using Bob's secret. If it's the last state of the channel, then Bob will be able to spend using the timer. And all of this is committed again using the operator. And
we have a question from the audience. DDG
sure.
asks, do you need SATS liquidity or do you just get liquidity from the specific asset? I'm assuming fees are still paid in SATS for transferring on Lightning.
So you need a little bit of SAT liquidity, but just to pay fees and to have to pay the fees of this Bitcoin transaction that eventually will be maybe broadcast on the blockchain. You need SATS to have to create these outputs to be above the dust limit. But then the Lightning fees, the nodes can ask to be either be paid in SATS or be paid in the assets. More likely, like it will be easier to just be paid in the asset that is being transferred. But it's the main liquidity that you need is in the asset, and then you need a little bit of SATS just to create this transaction and be able to broadcast them to the blockchain if you need to do so.
Nice.
Just with Lightning, every time we want to update the state of the channel, we just change the amounts. But as you can see, we just need to change the amounts on the RGB side. The stat amounts, they don't need to change because they just need to be above. We just get each of these output is above dust limit, so it's not particularly important. So this stat amount they don't need to change. The only thing that change at every update of the channel is just the RGB amounts. And this is going to be the specular Bob commitment transaction. Like normal Lightning stuff is specular to the one we saw before, and also the RGB state transaction will be specular, sending in this case 30 USDT to the first output controlled exclusively by Bob, and 470 to the one that is controlled. That should be for Alice if it's the last state of the channel, or that Bob can claim if it's not the last state of the channel. And actually in Lightning, we want to also to relay transaction to relay through other people, and so in reality we will have also at least a third output or more than that if we are running more payments at the same time. And this output will have the more complex spending condition, which is in this case either Bob with the secret of the payment, or Bob with the secret of Alice if it's a non-state, of Alice with time lock if the payment is being owned. And on RGB side, the only thing that changes is that we add another output to the state transition, another allocation, and we allocated the amount that we want to be relayed in the payment. So in this example, 100 USDT to the output that is used in Lightning for actually relaying of the payment. And all of this, as usual, is then this transition is anchored to the Bitcoin transaction that may or may not be eventually end up on the blockchain. So as you can see, we just plug on top of Lightning. We don't have much of an extra complexity. I mean, we have the complexity of RGB, the complexity of Lightning, but then there is not extra complexity that emerged by merging the two together, at least not much. And so it works very nicely, and RGB can work very nicely also with any future upgrade of Lightning. So if we move from HTLCs to PTLCs, RGB will just plug on top of it. If we in the future we will have like a 2, RGB will easily plug on top of it. So RGB is very flexible to plug on top of any upgrade that we may have on Lightning, or any other scalability solution that we may have on Bitcoin in the future that is not Lightning related. So another interesting thing. So once we have multiple assets on top of Lightning, then we can have a decentralized exchange on top of Lightning. So not only payments, but also trading. And this is far superior to the decentralized exchanges that currently exist on other chains like Ethereum, Tron, and the EVM, generic EVM chains. Why? Because on Ethereum, when you use like an automated market maker that use the liquidity pool system, you have several problems. First of all, everything is on chain, so you need to pay on chain fees, and everybody see what you're doing, so you have no privacy. Then you have the latency of needing to wait for sufficient amount of blocks to be sure of transaction finalities. Since everybody can see what you are doing, they can front run you, and this is called miner extracting value, that they can see your transaction and then use it to front run you. So let's say I'm I don't know, exchanging Bitcoin for USDT for a large amount. I send my transaction to the smart contract of the DEX, and other people or the miner can see it and then can place an order before mine, and then another after mine, and so they leverage the fact that I will move the price and extract value basically from my transaction, because I will pay an higher price than I would have if nobody saw my transaction, if nobody tried to front run. And also you have the problem that you have no guarantee on the price at which the trade will be executed. It's basically always a market order, so you just try to exchange Bitcoin for Ethereum or Bitcoin for USDT or whatever pair you are trading, and you don't know which price will be executed, because you don't know what will be the state of the smart contract when your transaction will actually be executed. So with Lightning, we don't have any of this problem. So first of all, we don't need to pay on-chain fees. We have very low latency. If we have a direct payment channels between the two parties, it can be like milliseconds, or depending on how good is the connection. But latency can be very, very low. There can be no front running, because nobody can see that that this time is even happening. And basically, it's based on the concept of atomic swaps. And the swap is atomic because we use the HTLC mechanism. So how does the swap work? basically what we do is we create a payment that is in a way circular. So let's say that we have Alice and Bob, and Alice sends Bitcoin to Bob, and but then with the same payments, Bob sends Tether back to Alice. So this is one single payment that goes from Alice back to Alice through Bob. And the only unusual thing about this payment is that at some point Bob receives one asset and sends another asset on the other side. But it's all atomic because it's the same HTLC, the same secret. So either both sides of the trade are finalized, or both sides are not. So either there is no trust involved with your counterparty because either it's atomic, either it goes through or it doesn't. And it's not even nothing particularly weird is happening here, because if you think about it, at the end, even when we just every node that is doing a relaying for someone else's payments on Lightning is kind of an exchange in a way, because you are exchanging Bitcoin from one channel to Bitcoin that you have in another channel. So we don't consider this an exchange because we consider the Bitcoin in one channel, Bitcoin in the other channels to be fungible with each other, to be the same asset with the same market price. So we don't call it an exchange, we don't call it a swap. But actually we are swapping coins on one side for coins on the other side. So the only new thing that is happening here is that the asset on one channel and the asset on the other channel, they're not fungible with each other and they have a different market price. But from a technical level, nothing particularly different from a normal relay on Lightning actually happens. So yeah, it's just very similar to normal HTLC payments. And the cool thing is also the people in the middle. They just know, like in the above part of the scheme, they just know that they are helping to for a Bitcoin payments to happen, and the one below they just helping for a Tether payment to happen, but they have no idea that a swap is happening and that the payment the payment they are dealing with is related to a swap, to an exchange. So there is very good privacy. Only the two parties involved they actually know that a trade is actually happening. So a question that is often asked is all of this good for Bitcoin? Mainly, you can argue that Bitcoin doesn't care. I mean, if you don't care about the assets on top of Bitcoin, this doesn't affect Bitcoin. It doesn't change the incentives on top of Bitcoin. It doesn't block the blockchain. So it's mostly Bitcoin doesn't care about RGB. But I also believe that actually there are a few positive externalities that RGB can provide for the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole. And first of all, shared infrastructure cost. So let's say that a company decides to integrate a payment terminal to accept the USDT payments on Lightning. That payment terminal will very easily also accept Bitcoin payments, so it can help also the adoption of Bitcoin through the adoption of stablecoin payments. Then offering decentralized trading on top of Bitcoin reduce the need for centralized exchanges. So for people that want to acquire Bitcoin or that want to bet against the US dollar, they can do it directly on top of Lightning without having to trust a centralized service provider. And then if we have like stablecoin payments on Lightning, we have more volume for Lightning node operators, so they can have another revenue stream to cover the cost of the infrastructure they have. And the same for the LSP. The LSP can have new revenue stream, and in general, all the Lightning companies can have new revenue stream to keep developing Lightning, which benefits also the user that only care about Bitcoin and they don't care about the stablecoins. So I do believe that this can be very positive for Bitcoin and for Lightning in particular. Okay, so yeah, before finishing the presentation, just a few words of what we did with the Bitfinex team working in RGB. We the goal of the team is just to facilitate the development of the RGB ecosystem. We are not currently working on any products. We're just working. Everything that we did since day one is fully open source, and so we're just trying to make the RGB ecosystem to be developed and be big enough that for us to maybe we start to monetize it, but that will come in the future. For now, we're just trying to facilitate the development of the RGB ecosystem. We did this through contributing to the protocol with PRs, testing, bug fixment, improve proposal. We built several developers tools, such as the one that we linked before, and in the GitHub organization you can find others. We released the Aris wallet for Android. You can actually, if you look on the Play Store, you can download it and try for yourself. We build the Lightning node, and we try to support as much as possible other teams that are building on RGB, because at the end, what we care is that this ecosystem truly grows. We don't care about being the market leader with Aris wallet. We only care that the RGB ecosystem grows and becomes healthy and big enough, and big enough then to have USDT on top of it. And these are a few screenshots from the Aris wallet, and then you can try for yourself by downloading it. Just a few words about the RGB ecosystem. Is already quite diverse. It's not only us. It's not only a couple of companies, but there are many companies that are independent from each other with their own source of funding that are working on RGB or on integrating RGB. So it's not the project of one company, and that is fully depending on that company keep being willing to finance development. But if tomorrow Bitfinex decided to stop investing in RGB, other companies are already working on it. So the protocol doesn't depend on a single company keep supporting it in the future. And there are a few links. This is the link to download Aris wallet, and this is a link to a website. I'm sure I can also link it here in the chat, where you can get some general information and educational material about RGB.
Is the Immerse wallet still beta, since you say that RGB is still not?
Yeah. So actually, what you can download from the store is testnet.
Got it.
It's still in beta.
And then I remember reading something about Bifrost and Storm, that they're related to RGB or how it works. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, those are more like complementary projects from the main dev behind RGB. The main dev of the protocol of RGB is Massimo Rulowski, and he's a very creative guy. So he also have other projects that are in a way complementary to RGB. Bifrost is a project for like a new kind of Latin network with different channel structure, and Storm is a project for distributed data storage that is with incentive payments on top of Lightning. But these are more like complementary projects to RGB. They're not part of RGB itself, and you don't need those to use RGB.
Got it. And I read that you're using zero knowledge tech, obviously, to make sure that you have that client-side privacy and security. A question for you, and this might be a little bit tougher, but I think it's important for us to prepare. We can be first to market, but if we don't articulate why this is powerful, we can potentially have trouble with governments and Treasury and FinCEN about I love that chain analysis can't see these transactions, but could we potentially be in the same problem that the mixers are in, and that they're banned or we're not allowed to use them? How is RGB addressing those issues or those questions that will come up?
I think like the privacy of RGB is quite a different model from other privacy solutions. So the thing is that basically, when you receive an RGB transaction, you need to validate the whole history of the asset back into the chain. So you can see transaction of other people potentially. You can not everything, but you can see some information about other people, and specifically you can see the UTXO of previous owners, because you need that for validation. So let's say that I don't know, I maybe receive money from some UTXO that is associated to some blacklisted individual. When I spend it, people can see it. Exchanges, for example, may still refuse the deposit or something like that. But where privacy in RGB really shines is on the, let's say, on the present privacy. So on the past, and actually in the what you do right now in the future may be visible to other people, because then I will spend the transaction and other people will see what I did. But what I do right now, nobody sees it. So it's very good privacy in the present, meaning that, I don't know, for example, if I am selling all my, let's say that there is a company that tokenizes the equity, and so I'm selling all my equity. Other people doesn't know, nobody else, if not the buyer, can see it. So it's not an information that people can use to short the company equity or stuff like that, or to sue me because I had vested stocks that I couldn't sell, stuff like that. Or in general, yeah, if I receive a payment, no one else can see that I received the payment. Or even better, I have privacy from the payer. So when I receive a payment, I actually, we use this technique to hide the UTXO where I get paid. So the payment endpoint is a blinded UTXO. So it's the UTXO plus a blinding factor. So who pays me cannot see when I will spend the money again. It doesn't know to which UTXO they went, so it cannot monitor the UTXO and see when I spend that money again. So, for example, who gave me the tokenized equity cannot see that I moved them, or who sends me a normal stablecoin payments cannot see that when I'm spending it again, or if I still have it, or if I don't have it anymore. So we have good privacy features, but they are not exactly the same of what you get from CoinJoin, because then in the future people can still see what they did if they manage to receive a transaction that part of the history of that asset also involved my financial activity. So I think the challenge with the regulatory agency will be completely different. Maybe they will be okay with it because exchanges can still do their analysis. Maybe they won't, but for sure it will be a very different discussion from what we are having right now with CoinJoin.
Nice, thank you, because that was an important question that I had pending. Then finally, I know that Taproot has used several elements from RGB. Why should the users or builders in our hackathon research RGB and use that instead? What are the differences, and why should they use RGB instead?
Yeah, as you said, the Taro Taproot asset has a very similar design. He copied most of the design of RGB, which I think it was wise, because I think it's a very good design. I think there are still a few differences in the design that makes RGB slightly better. For example, with the Taro, you can only send asset to output of the same Bitcoin transaction that you are using to spend the previous UTXO. Which means that you have less privacy because there is on-chain connection between input and output. While with RGB, you send to any UTXO. When I do an RGB payment, I could send it to an old UTXO from of Satoshi. I could send USDT to the UTXO of Satoshi or to an UTXO on the blockchain, and the blockchain observer can see the connection between sender and receiver of RGB payments. While with Taro you can, so you have worse privacy, and also you need to send some Satoshi to your receiver so that they can have this output. So yes, I think it will end up with a bit worse user experience, but I don't know, maybe they will figure out a way to mitigate it. Also, I think, RGB is written in Rust, while Taro is written in Go, so depending on what is your own view on that, it can be an advantage or a disadvantage. Personally, I think it's an advantage, but anybody can have his own opinion on this. And but I think also the main thing is that, as I was saying, RGB is more an industry project. It's not a company project, so it doesn't depend on a single company keep investing in it for it to keep developing in the future. While Taro currently is mostly a project from Latin Laos that are very talented people and they are very good at what they're doing. Still still a venture capital backed company that, as far as I know, is probably not even profitable right now. So there is a serious risk that in the future, like maybe they shift their business goal, or maybe they won't have enough funding to support it. I mean, they raised a lot of money, so I think they're good for several years. But I mean, what I'm saying is that it's really depending on the ability and the willingness of single companies to keep developing it. While with RGB, we have more companies, individuals involved, so we have much
Strong
more resilience
industry.
on that side. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Federico, for answering those questions. I really appreciate your time, and we want to wish builders at the hackathon a lot of luck. And if they need you, how can they reach out to you? If you have what do you prefer, Twitter, Noster? What is the easiest way for them to connect with you for any questions about RGB?
Yeah, I think Telegram is where I answer more quickly. Just like my handle is very simple. My name Federico Tenga. So yeah, you can write me there, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Well, thank you for joining us, Federico. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate you being here.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you so much, and yeah, good luck with that.
Thank you.